Homeschool Your Way. I'm your host, Jana Cook, and Bookshark's community manager. Today, I am joined by Cherie Taylor. She is a homeschool mom of one, and her unique location gives her a perspective that not every homeschool parent has. Cherie Taylor is also the field director of an area of IDEA, which is an Alaskan homeschool support program. I'm going to let Cherie tell you more about her Alaskan life. Cherie, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. So, as Jana mentioned, I am a homeschool mama of one. He is 11 and in the fifth grade. And we started homeschooling when he was kindergarten. I am a wife of a retired military person, and we moved back to Alaska in 2016 when he got out of the military. And my son started school in 2018. And we knew we wanted to homeschool even before we had children. We had talked about the potential of homeschooling. And so when we moved back to Alaska and settled here in Soldotna, I had approached a couple of my friends who were homeschooling to figure out, how do I do this? I don't even know where to start. And they suggested IDEA, which is a homeschooling support program. So I started as a homeschool mom in 2018. And in 2020, when COVID happened, I was asked to be hired on temporary for IDEA. And just to answer questions about homeschooling in general, homeschooling with IDEA, what does that look like? And in October of that year, the gal that was the field rep became a contact teacher here in our office. And so I was asked to apply and encouraged to apply for the field rep position, which I did. And now I've been the field rep for 3.5 years. I love IDEA. It's a program that it's a homeschool correspondence program. So we are part of a public school district here in Alaska. We are the largest school in Alaska with over 7,000 students statewide. We are a statewide program. And here in our area, we have about 1,600 students. That's everything from kindergarten through 12th grade. And with our program, parents are the educators. Parents know their children best. And so we come alongside those parents to support them in whatever and however they choose to teach their kids.
Now, prior to actually homeschooling your son, when you and your husband were talking about it, what kind of exposure did you have to homeschool just in your own personal life?
Oh, that's a great question. So I grew up in Colorado, and all of the homeschoolers I knew when I was in school many, many years ago was that they were weird. They were socially awkward. They were different from other students. And so for the longest time, I was very against homeschooling. I don't want my kid to be weird. I have found that homeschooling is way more prevalent now, and especially here in Alaska, where the population is so spread out. And I did kind of have this negative stigma or negative idea of homeschoolers as being socially awkward. I have learned over the years that that is very untrue, and that homeschool students are probably more social than even public school students are now. Maybe that has to do with social media and that there's not a lot of face-to-face interaction amongst public school kids. Part of my job here is to plan and promote social activities and field trips for our families. So we see lots and lots of families coming together to get that social emotional learning in, even though they may be homeschooling and be working from home with their kids with just their immediate family. There is still a lot of interaction between homeschooling families here.
So I was one of those homeschooling families in the 90s, and we also thought homeschoolers were weird, which is funny because I want to put out there that is it that there's always going to be outliers and kind of socially awkward people, and those are the ones that we're kind of our eyes are drawn to because they are out of the norm, that there really were normal homeschool families even during that time that
Right.
they just weren't the ones that, people paid attention to, which I think is interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I could definitely see that. Yeah. I'm sure there were plenty of normal homeschool kids when I was growing up. It's just, you're right. The ones we saw or the ones that stood out to us were the ones who were awkward.
Now, newsflash, I'm weird, and I'm totally fine with that now as an adult. Of course, as a kid, I don't think you ever wanna think that you're weird or that what you're doing is kind of out of the norm. But Cherie, I know you, and you're slightly weird too. So
It's true. It's true. You're right. I am weird. I'm okay with it. I'll own it. It's fine.
So are we then turning around and embracing the weirdness and maybe we're just making it, more mainstream because it's not so much like you said, the socially awkward stigma of homeschooling really has been dispelled. I know that even when I was homeschooling, people would be like, "Oh my gosh, how did you socialize?" And I was standing in a grocery store at 17 working, and I'm like, "I'm talking to you." So clearly I am able to communicate with people of all ages, something that
Sure.
not all of my peers were able to do. So there's so many things that are coming to light now with the mainstream homeschool that as an OG makes me really excited and validating kind of my experience from way back in the day. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so you guys were in Alaska for military first?
We were here from '09 to 13 with the military. Had my son here in Alaska, and then we moved to North Carolina for about 3 years, and then he retired, and we came back to Alaska and settled in Saldana.
So, when you started to homeschool after that first year, because I mean, you and I both know working with homeschool families that that first year it's a transition year. I mean, there's so much unlearning that has to be done and really redesigning how you think about education. What kept you wanting to homeschool after your first year?
Oh man, I don't know that I did want to that I did want to initially. I'm a very type A personality, and so it was a lot of looking at the curriculum we chose, and okay, this says go to this page in this book and read this many pages. Check, done. Move on to the next thing. Check, done. So I had my checklist. That is not how my son learns. And it took me probably 3 years to finally realize that it's okay to not school him how I pictured schooling needed to be. I was public schooled. And so I think in my mind, I had this vision of what homeschooling would look like and really had to kind of readjust my thinking and my perspective and my style and how I went about it to better facilitate his way of learning what was interesting to him and to kind of let go of some of those expectations and some of those things that I put on myself to that this is how school is supposed to look. And it does not have to look that way. And it can look different for every family. And that's okay.
Yeah, and it can
So,
look different for your family day by day, and that's okay.
yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think that really what it boiled down to for us wanting to continue was that we liked being able to have the freedom to spend our days how we wanted and to pursue the things that my son was interested in instead of trying to make him fit into a box or into a mold and then get distracted by it's not the public school teacher's fault that they've got 20 kids and they're all at different levels as far as you know some they have to teach at this level and there are kids that fall below that and kids that go above that that they lose on either end and they can only do so much with that many students in one classroom. Whereas when you're homeschooling, you can really tailor the education to the student. And we loved that freedom. We loved the support that we were getting from the staff here at IDEA. And we loved that, like I said, that we could be flexible with our time. So it really only took us a few hours a day to do a full day of school. So then I'm thinking, what would he be doing for the other 6 hours sitting in a public school? He'd be probably getting in trouble. He's a
Yeah.
curious boy. He would probably be getting in trouble.
I remember, I think it might have been a college professor, he had said to me, "This isn't Burger King, you can't have it your way." And I thought, like, we need to somehow reverse engineer that to say, "This is homeschooling, you can have it your way. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's journey. It is so unique, we get this opportunity, like you said, to tailor it to our children." And I, like you, it took me several years, I think a little bit longer than you, but it might have been because I had 3, for me to embrace that because
Yeah.
I was homeschooled. So not only did I have an idea of what that should or could look like, my kids were not me. And that
Oh,
I
yeah.
think every parent sometimes I feel like parents are discouraged by their own journey, like, "Oh, I shouldn't be doing that," or, "Oh, I should know better." It's like, "Oh my gosh, I was homeschooled and I still made those same mistakes." Like, we all
Yeah.
parent out of our own experiences. And I think we all homeschool then out of our own educational experiences. And it takes kind of deciding to go do it a new way and learn alongside your child to really, before it really starts to click. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, this is great. But like any parent, when you're trying to have your child go a certain way and they're fighting you tooth and nail because that's just not how it's going to work for them. I don't think prior generations had the freedom that we do to be like, so my kid doesn't want to do math this way. Let's find a different way to do math. And so there's so many new avenues that we can go down that it can get overwhelming, which is why families need support like IDEA and programs like that to really help come alongside them and create community. Speaking of community, being in Alaska where there is a lot of land and people are really spread out, what are some of the advantages of homeschooling with your program or even Alaska in general that there are ways to have community in that?
Yeah, so I think that as far as with IDEA, we all of our regional offices, we have 6 regional offices, and all of our regional offices have a field rep, which is what my position is. And that person is really responsible for creating those opportunities for families to come together and to have community and to have activities and events where those families can get together. It is difficult when there's a majority, not a majority, when there's a lot of areas in our state that are off the road system. So they're only accessible by plane or boat. And those families, we have to be creative in ways and finding ways for them to connect. So we do some virtual activities. They do have a contact teacher, each family that they can reach out to give them support. And then the field rep that handles those areas does try really hard to come up with some unique ways to invite them in to meet other homeschooling families who might be in their similar situation. Um, it is difficult in a large land area with few people, but we do try really hard to find ways to help families connect.
This idea of off the road living just blows, this girl's mind who grew up in a Chicagoland area where there was, endless roads, always roads, roads that connected to roads that connected, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so to think about being off road, what would you say in your area is the percentage of families that are classified in that category?
So in our area, there's only one community that is not on a road system, technically on a road system, and that's Kodiak, the island of Kodiak. They are part of our region or my region. Um, but because they are so remote, they are part of activities that take place for those people in the region that are off the road system. So they're technically handled out of our office with a contact teacher from our office and a tech from our office. But the field rep that serves the families on Kodiak is the same field rep. She's actually in Eagle River, and she handles all of our what we call Region G off the road system families to facilitate activities for them.
How exciting. Now, I think maybe one of the advantages of living in Alaska is the endless supply of outdoor activities in all seasons. So, what are some of the things that you have been able to enjoy with your son and your family as you've homeschooled in your area in Alaska?
Oh man, all the outdoorsy things, all the outdoorsy things. We've been able to camp and fish and hike. And for some of our families, we've set up field trips over the summer for a train trip and a float trip and a kayak trip. Um, and then in the winter, we've done things like cross country skiing and snow tubing and skiing, downhill skiing, and snow play dates and ice skating. So there is something in every season to enjoy the outdoors here for sure. It's not ever a question of is it too cold in the winter? It's more, do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right jacket and the right gloves and the right, hat and boots, and so that your parts don't freeze?
Now, one thing that I had never heard of until I actually came to Alaska was the breakup season or mud season. So
Oh,
what
mhm.
what do you do in that Explain what that is to our listeners for those who don't know, and then maybe an activity that you guys plan for that season.
Sure. So breakup season is spring or about that time of year when things start to warm up and all the ice starts to melt. All the snow and the ice starts melting and it gets really dirty and muddy and wet. Um, that is what we call breakup season. So all that ice and snow is breaking up and starting to melt. We're starting to get longer days, so more sunshine. Um, it is very hard to find outdoor activities during that particular time of year because it is so messy outside. So at that time, we do typically end up doing more indoor activities, not as much outdoors to do at that time of year because it is so messy outside. And so we end up doing more indoor things during that season. It's a short
That's
season
just
usually.
Let's talk about a possible disadvantage for your geographical location. You just mentioned that you could start getting more sunshine. What does it look like for you guys when you have very little sunshine?
Hmm. So the shortest day of the year is in December, December 21st, and we have about 5 hours of daylight during that day. The sun comes up around 10, goes down around 3. And so we have to, I have found that it helps me if I make myself get outside and do something. It would be very easy to become a hermit and be inside all the time next to my wood stove, which is super warm. So I have taken up cross country skiing personally. There are people who snowshoe or um, downhill ski or snow machine or snowmobile. So I think that if you find an activity that gets you out, it doesn't affect you quite as much, the darkness. And by the time you realize it's dark all the time, you're on the other side and you're gaining daylight. So it can be a challenge. And then in the summer, it's a challenge too, because, well, a lot of people here have blackout curtains to block out the sun so that they can sleep at night. Um, you're talking never really getting dark. The peak of summer, you get twilight dark, but not dark, dark. That's hard for some people who like to sleep.
So when I was in Alaska last year in May, when the days were extending, I would just wake up in the middle of the night. It just was so interesting to me. I'd just be looking outside. I'm like, it's like you said, like twilight or dawn, but it's 1:30 in the morning. And so I had the pleasure of traveling with one of my daughters, and she would wake up and she would be like, Mom, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just looking outside because I can, because it's not dark. I can see everything. And I mean, if you haven't experienced it, it's just a very interesting way to experience like the see the world. And 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, you just expect it to be pitch black and it just isn't. And so
Yeah.
how
And
neat.
one of the bonuses to the darkness in the wintertime is the northern lights. They definitely make it worth it.
Yeah. Well, that is one thing I
So
have yet to see, but maybe this year. Fingers crossed that it's happening this year.
that's right.
Um, So let's go back to IDEA. I was there because IDEA holds a curriculum fair, and a lot of vendors from the lower 48 come up, and we spend a couple weeks up there and kind of tour around with you guys and go to the different site locations. But what actually got you involved with IDEA? So you kind of said in the beginning you had talked to some friends. So they were already involved with that particular support program and kind of introduced you to it. Had you heard about it before that?
I feel like there was some buzz before that about IDEA. There are particularly two homeschooling support programs here on the peninsula where I'm located. And I remember asking friends when we were looking around which one. I had friends that homeschooled with one and friends that homeschooled with IDEA. And I remember asking, which one is better? Which one would you choose? And the two that were with the other program said that if they had it to do over, they would choose IDEA. But they were with their particular program because it's associated with the local school district and their husbands worked for the local school district. And so that kind of helped me decide then that, okay, well, then we're going to try IDEA. We're going to go with IDEA. And we have been so pleased and so thankful for the program ever since we started.
So, what, in your opinion, sets IDEA apart from these other programs that are available? Because people who are listening obviously don't necessarily live in Alaska, but they're homeschooling families who have educational choice. So, just personally, as you were going through and making your decision, what were some of the things that stood out about IDEA that made you say, that's what I'm looking for? That's the type of support I want?
Sure, sure. So, um, for me, it was that all of the staff here at IDEA in this office are former or current homeschoolers. So they had that homeschooling experience. IDEA was a program that was created by homeschoolers for homeschoolers. And that was not the case with the other program that's in this area. There are several programs statewide. And so that can be um, something that parents, really do want to dial in what makes one program better over another. I always encourage parents to check out both programs or check out all the programs, check out all of your options. We very strongly believe in parents' choice in every area. So we are very adamant about coming alongside parents to support them in whatever and however they choose to teach their kiddos. Um, I'm not an expert on the other program. I can tell you about IDEA and I can tell you about all the great things about IDEA. Um, and I can tell you that we have a variety of families that use several different types of methods and several different types of curriculum to teach their children, and we want to support them in whatever they choose. We are definitely a school of choice. We believe in choice, and we want parents to know that they have a choice in everything with their children's education.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, especially when it can be overwhelming when there are so many choices, but if you choose a program where the staff are currently or have been homeschoolers, I think it's advantageous because they do have they have personal experience as opposed to just if you have a program where, maybe they don't know it can bring a sense of comfort if you know that somebody's already
Sure,
been there. Even if you don't necessarily pick what they had used or advised, at least they know, they've dabbled in it, they understand it a little bit better. I remember when I first had children, my pediatrician didn't not have children. And part of me was like, I don't know if I want a pediatrician that doesn't have kids. And people were like, why? Why does that bother you? And I'm like, because she hasn't experienced it yet, right? She has all the head knowledge. I'm
yeah.
not saying she's not a great doctor, and she was. I stuck with her. But I will tell you that once she started having her own family, we had become pretty close and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I now see." I there's such a difference when
I
you
get it.
walk through it yourself as
Sure,
opposed to just theorizing about it and being able to present solutions, but nothing that you've ever actually had to do yourself. It makes a big difference.
sure, sure.
So, Sherry, in your personal, we'll go personal first and then you can give professional. Why is it
Sure.
important for families to be part of a homeschool community?
I feel like it's super important, no matter if you're part of a homeschool program or not. If you choose to homeschool your children, you should be part of homeschool community because there is support there. There is support, there is encouragement, there is sometimes instruction, hard instruction from um, fellow homeschooling families. There is variety, there is community there. So you don't feel like you're isolated or like you're an island. There are people you can bounce ideas off of, or you can talk to about, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that, and get input and get advice. Whether you choose to use it or not is up to you, but at least you have someone else who's going through the same thing that you are, that you can talk to about life. I think it's important, not just in homeschooling, but in anything in life. It's important to have community.
Yeah, I think that COVID really kind of leveled the playing field for people, everywhere. So before maybe one of the challenges of homeschooling in a remote area is that location and you can't physically get together necessarily all the time. But then COVID happened and nobody could get together. And so it kind of we all were feeling that isolation and coming out of it, I hope that people and homeschooling families understand that we really do need community, whether it is virtually or physically, support because part of it is you just don't know what you don't know. My goodness, if my 45-year-old self could go back and talk to my 30-year-old self, the things in parenting and instruction, I would say, like, mostly I would just say that doesn't matter, Jana. That just doesn't matter. That doesn't let that go. Who cares?
Yeah.
Because I would say
Yeah.
I'm more of an A-B personality. I'm not super like have to check every box, but I like the boxes to be there if and when I want to check them. And so, so many times I think that as we start homeschooling, back to the beginning, we have a certain perception of how it should be. And when you're surrounded by others who are a little bit further down the road, who can encourage you when you're getting really worked up about whatever it is, not reading a classic or your child not doing, not loving the activity that you spent 3 weeks planning, that,
That
someone
never
can just come in
happens.
that never happen.
No.
Not in
Mm-mm.
Alaska. Only in the
Mm-mm.
lower
No.
48 does
Yeah.
that happen for
Hmm.
sure. But that you just all humans need encouragement.
Agreed. Agreed. And something I tell a lot of people too that I've learned is to really give yourself grace. It's okay if you don't know or if you feel like you've messed up. You're doing just fine and give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've all messed up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's inevitable.
In
And
life.
your teenage children will be the first ones to let you know where you have messed up. And so, Cherie, be prepared for
That's
that
funny
one.
because my son's 11 and he's not even a teenager yet. Yeah, he's 11. He's not even a teenager yet, but he lets me know when I've messed up. Hmm.
Mhm,
So I can
mhm.
only imagine how much worse it's going to get when he's a teen.
Well, I mean, grace upon
Mhm.
grace. I do think that parenting is a Pandora's box of all of your faults for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I was telling somebody the other day who she is pregnant with her first and just telling her what a wonderful, hard life parenting is.
I know
So yeah.
you want people to go in with eyes wide open, but then at the same time, you're like, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want people
Right? Like
to
it
think
really is
it's
wonderful. It just really is hard.
yeah,
So in a lot of
yeah,
ways. So
yeah. But I think that's true about homeschool as well.
sure. Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely rewarding. But there are days when we want to pull our hair out. Both of us, my son and I both. So, and now I didn't even mention, but now my husband um, is no longer working a full-time job, and so he is full-time dad schooling. He's actually the primary homeschooler now. As of this last year, he is the one who does the day-to-day, and while I'm working full-time, he does the day-to-day schooling of our son, which I think is super important for my son to have that daddy time, and that boy time and that man time, and um, they're able to do more outdoorsy things together and still be learning and love learning. Whether
Yeah.
that looks like a traditional sit down to a math worksheet or go out and measure something to build to get your math done, they're both ways he's learning something. So,
Yeah. And I do love your honesty about we had talked about that a little bit before this recording, that there is some loss there for you as being the primary instructor up until this point. It's not that sometimes I think we get in our society, we think that if we have loss or grief, that it has to be a bad thing, right? But
mhm.
it's just part of there's some things we do get to let go of. And even though it feels like a loss, it's still a positive experience for everybody. But as a mom, I'm sure that was not necessarily easy to give up.
Yeah, yeah, it was hard. And there are still days that I miss spending time with him and watching the wonder in his eyes as he learns something and or figures something out. But I still get to witness that, just not during traditional school time. So, still in the evenings, we still get to talk about some school type things and on the weekends and when I'm working from home. And so I still get to see some of that. It is, like you said, that you grieve the loss of seeing it every day all day, but there are some beautiful things from that too, because I get to see this relationship between my husband and my son that's growing and flourishing, and um, that wouldn't normally be there if my husband was working a full-time job.
Yeah. We
So,
have been very fortunate in our family to have some scheduling unique scheduling, and so I feel like my girls have had a really, solid relationship with their dad, and they've been able to do things that, like, I never talked to my dad or spent that kinda time with my dad, and but there are times when they do things when I'm working that, like, my feelings get hurt. Like,
I
"You
wanted
did
to do
that with."
that.
Yes, you did. I have legit FOMO for sure anyways, just my personality, but I do have to remind myself, like, "No, that's good that they got to do that," and I thought all these years when I was home full time with my girls and my husband was working out of the house, did he ever feel that way? Like, I don't know if it was just, like, an expectation, like, it just but now that it's reversed, I was like, "Oh, oh, you guys went and did that? Oh, okay. Oh, well, I'm glad you guys got that done."
That's interesting. I would have to ask my husband if he ever had that feeling of, oh, like that he wished he could have done whatever it was we were doing. I imagine they do feel that way.
Yeah, I think it's something that we don't
So,
ever I mean, I never thought of. My husband would make
yeah.
comments like, "Oh, you guys got to it must be nice, you guys got to go to the zoo on a Wednesday, a random Wednesday," right? Like, he'd make little comments like that, but now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, "Oh, I think he was being serious. I think he really did feel like."
Like he was missing out.
Yeah, and this is a total aside, there was one time they went to an event, and they'd got a caricature picture done.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just my husband and the 3 girls, and they brought it home, and I was so upset. I was like,
Aw.
"I'm not in it. I'm not in it." And then my husband was like, "You're in everything else. Can't I have this for with our girls?" And I
Oh,
thought I mean, I really had to check myself, and I was like, "That is such a beautiful." I mean, there's so many things that comes from being able to be flexible and have time and see these different relationships that, you don't wouldn't necessarily see if you were in a traditional your children went to school every day and you both went to work every day, and
yeah.
it's amazing. So it's still up, and I still look at it sometimes and think, "I'm not in there, but that's fine."
But it's okay.
Yeah, I'm not I mean, it
Uh,
literally has been, like, 12 years.
oh my gosh. And you still feel that way? Aw.
Yes, insight
Mm,
into a little bit of my
yeah.
psyche, but
Yeah.
yeah. It's, it's so neat though to be able to that, parents can do it, like you said, at different times, like non-traditional. It doesn't have to be during the day like it normally
Yeah.
is. And both parents can be involved or other parents or other family members. I mean, it's so unique and wonderful. And I'm sure you see that in your community where you're at as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of families here in Alaska that the that dad or mom works on the slope. So works up north Alaska where they have to fly to their job, and a lot of them are they work a 2 and 2 schedule, so 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And so we have some families who will school for the 2 weeks that one parent is away at work, and then they will take off the 2 weeks that that parent is home, and then they just school year round. So it's really wonderful that they get to kind of their school day, their school week, their school year can look however they want to. They don't have to start a certain day and be done a certain day and take certain breaks. They can take schoolwork with them if they choose to take a 2 week vacation in the middle of the year or not. Just take off for that 2 weeks or, however long they're gone. We also have a lot of families that subsistence fish or hunt. And so that's how they're providing food for their families. And so they are gone for a month to go on this moose hunt and get their meat for the year and fill the freezer. And so they don't do school while they're doing that. And that's okay. So it's a lot of flexibility and a lot of freedom, which is wonderful.
So I'm just have to ask, what does moose meat taste like?
Oh, it's delicious. Although I'm finding that I think my favorite game meat is black bear. Um, it's hard to describe what it tastes like. Better than beef. It's
Mm.
about all I can say. I'll have to have you try some. I'll give you some moose meat and some bear meat when you come up
All right.
this
Well,
spring.
I look forward to
Yeah.
that. Cherie, before we go, do you have a homeschool hack you can share with our listeners? A
My
minute?
homeschool hack would be game schooling. I mean, usually like once a week or once every other week, we will take a day to just play a game. And that's our school for the day.
And what's your favorite game?
Whether it's right now, our favorite game to play is Wits and Wagers as a family. Wits and Wagers. So, do you know this game? Wits and
No, I
Wagers?
don't. Mm-mm.
Oh, so we play it kind of our own way, but basically each person gets a dry erase board and you ask a random question like how many miles is it from the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas to Paris, France? You write down your answer and then you're trying to get as close to the actual number without going over. And you can bet on or choose someone else's answer and you earn um, points by guessing the right answer or guessing on your own the right answer or betting on someone else's answer that you think is right. That's a pretty fun game. So learn some random facts and there's writing involved and there's reading because you got to read everybody's answer and yeah, it's a
So,
lot of fun.
if in your family, who's the best?
Oh, my husband. It's infuriating almost every time he wins because it's a logic game and he's real good at those kind of games and it drives me crazy.
That's funny. Wits and Wagers. I'm gonna have to look
So
that one up. That sounds like
yeah,
a lot of
wits
fun.
and wagers. It's lots of fun.
So before we go, why don't you just tell those who are listening who might be in your area about the upcoming curriculum fair that IDEA hosts?
Oh, sure. So we have our upcoming statewide curriculum fair. It does go from Anchorage to Soldotna to Fairbanks and to Juneau. Ours here in the Soldotna area is April 19th and 20th. Um, we typically have about 45 to 50 vendors that come, curriculum vendors that come. We'll be at the Sterling Community Center over in Sterling. And you can find more information on our website, ideafamilies.org. It's a great place to come talk to vendors from different curriculum companies. We will have workshops available throughout both days. There will also be a keynote lunch happening, and it is free for IDEA families, and there is a small charge for non-IDEA families to attend. But it's a great place to meet other homeschoolers and to talk to vendors from different curriculum companies and to hear some workshops. So you should come join us.
Definitely should. Bookshark will be there. I will be there with my counterpart, Maddie, and we are looking forward to another year of participating in the IDEA Curriculum Fair. Cherie, thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for sharing your stories and your experiences up in Alaska as a homeschooling parent. I appreciate you and all that you're doing for your community and supporting those who choose to homeschool.
Thank you, Jana. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys. Until next time. Bye bye.